Good morning, Rabbi.
Okay. Perek Daled, chapter 4 in Mishna Pesachim, Mishnah Vav, Mishnah 6. Okay, so again, continuing with the discussion about performing work on Erev Pesach. So Rabbi Meir says, Kol malacha, any type of work, shehischa ba kaidim l'arba asar, that you began before the 14th of Nisan, meaning before Erev Pesach, goim ra ba'arba asar, you can complete it on the 14th. So Rabbi Meir means if we're talking about a place where work is not done. Nonetheless, if we're talking about a type of work that, although the Mishnah doesn't say this explicitly, the Mishnah means any work that you need for Yontif, you need it for the holiday, okay, and you started it before Erev Pesach, you can complete it on Erev Pesach before midday. So even though we're in a place where they don't do work even the whole Erev Pesach, however, if we're talking about you need to do something for Yontif that you began before the 14th of Nisan, before Erev Pesach, you can complete it on the 14th. Okay, you complete it on the 14th, again before midday. But you can't start it on the 14th, even though you can complete it. Meaning, if, again, we're talking about something that you could do for Yontif, and you need for Yontif, and you could complete it before midday of Erev Pesach, but you're first starting it. It's not something you started before Erev Pesach. You want to start it on Erev Pesach. That Rabbi Meir says you cannot do. So even if we're talking about a place where they don't do work even the whole Erev Pesach, even before midday, but if we're talking about something that you need for Pesach, and you started it before Erev Pesach, before the 14th, and you can finish it on the 14th before midday, that you can do. You can finish it before midday, but you cannot start it on Erev Pesach, even though you could finish it before midday. If we're talking about something that you don't need for Pesach, then even if you started before Erev Pesach, you can't do an Erev Pesach. And that's again because we're talking about a place where the custom is not to do work the whole Erev Pesach. If we're talking about a place where the custom is to do work before Erev Pesach, then you can do work Erev Pesach, even if it's something that you don't need for Yontif. Okay, so that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. But the point is, Rabbi Meir, now for what we have to stress again, this point about Rabbi Meir for the next part of the Mishnah, and that is that to start something on Erev Pesach, that you can't do according to Rabbi Meir, even if you need it for Pesach. The Chachamim say, Shalosh umaniyos oisin malach Rabbi Pesachim bar chatzais. There are three types of work, three types of craft that can be done, or actually three, Shalosh umaniyos really means three craftsmen. Oisin malacha can do their work on Erev Pesach until chatzais, until midday, which means the Chachamim are saying there are three types of work that even if you need to start them on Erev Pesach, you could. And you got to finish them by midday. These are types of works that are very much needed by people. And these are the ones that the sages allowed. The Elohim, these are they. Hachayotim, tailors. Vasaparim, barbers. Vakaibsin, launderers. These three people are launderers.
Okay.
These three people can even start doing something for Yontif on Erev Pesach itself. Now, Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says, Avaratzanim, shoemakers too. Now, the point here of the Chachamim about these, what is it about these three specific types of work? If these are only three things that the people really need Erev Pesach, nothing else. So the point is like this, and let me read to you from the bottom, just I think it'll be clear this way. This leniency is derived from a leniency issued regarding the labor prohibition of Chol Hamoed. Right? We know Chol Hamoed, you can't do certain activities, can't do malacha, you can't do malacha on Erev Pesach. Okay? Now, tailoring, haircutting, and laundering are all generally forbidden during Chol Hamoed. However, the point of the however is that there are exceptions. There are exceptions where on Chol Hamoed, these three things we find exceptions that you can do them on Chol Hamoed. However, something needs to be sewn for Yontif. An unskilled person, meaning not a tailor, may sew it in his usual manner on Chol Hamoed. Okay, you need to sew something for Yontif, and you're not a tailor, you're just a regular person. You can go ahead and sew it regularly. Similar, so there's one that's the leniency we find by sewing, by tailoring. Similarly, one who just returned from overseas and one who has just been released from prison may cut their hair and launder their clothes on Chol Hamoed. Another exception, it's not that's an exception by hair cutting. That's an exception by washing clothes. Since, as we will learn in the next Mishnah, the labor laws of Erev Pesach are more lenient than those of Chol Hamoed, the sages reason that whatever work is permitted on Chol Hamoed, even under limited circumstances, is permitted on Erev Pesach in all circumstances. Since tailoring, haircutting, and laundering are sometimes permitted on Chol Hamoed, they are always permitted on Erev Pesach. So that's their point. The disagree with Reb Meir that these are things that could be first done on Erev Pesach, but it's these three specific things that we find have leniencies on Chol Hamoed, and once we find those leniencies in Chol Hamoed, we can apply them even broader when it comes to work on Erev Pesach, before Chatzos, before midday. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says shoemakers too. Now, here again, the Tanna Kama didn't mention the shoemakers, Rabbi Yehuda does. Right. But Rabbi Yehuda needs to be following the same pattern. Do we find some kind of a leniency for shoes when it comes to Chol Hamoed? And the answer is yes. Since many Jews walked great distances in order to fulfill the command of appearing in the temple on Yom Tif, right? People had to walk. They didn't have, Uber and stuff like that. They had to go ahead and walk to Yerushalayim. Okay? It is understandable that their shoes were in need of repair by the time they arrived in Yerushalayim. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the rabbis allow them to repair their shoes on Chol Hamoed. There's another exception. Since work on shoes is sometimes permitted on Chol Hamoed, it is permitted to even manufacture shoes on Erev Pesach before midday for one who needs shoes for Yontif. Now listen, Rabbi Yehuda took it a little bit took it like this. Since we know you can repair shoes on Chol Hamoed for those people that came up for Yontif, so we see working on shoes is permitted on Chol Hamoed. So now on Erev Pesach, before Chatzos, if somebody needs a new pair of shoes for Yontif, you can make a new pair of shoes. The first opinion of the Mishnah that did not include shoemakers, it says because you're going an extra step. Repairing shoes is one thing. That we find in leniency. Making shoes, that's a different thing. In the cases before, you talked about laundering, haircutting, sewing. These were things that those things themselves were permissible. But you don't find making shoes for Chol Hamoed being permissible. You find fixing shoes. So basically, Yehuda said fixing, making, not really different from the letter of the law. It's not necessarily that different. They're both balachas. Right. But the Chachamim said there's more involved in making the shoes. And since we don't find making shoes being permitted on Chol Hamoed, therefore the first opinion Mishnah did not include them in the three types of craftsmen that can do their work on a repace before Chatzos, before midday, even in a place where typically they don't do work on Erev Pesach the whole day. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.